Hi everybody, and welcome to this webinar with the MAC for International Women's Day Festival. My name is Lisa de Jong and I'm really glad to have you here and that you have given an hour of your lovely Sunday to this important topic, which is overcoming period pain and PMS, something that we maybe don't all talk about, but a lot of us suffer with. And yeah, so really glad to see you here. Everyone's welcome. I can see some more people coming in the doors, so I hope you're getting comfortable. So I'm going to introduce myself and then I'll kind of speak a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. You might grab a paper and pen. Feel free to take screenshots of the slides at any point or write down any notes on your phone. So my name is Lisa de Jong. I am a women's health coach specializing in the menstrual cycle. I'm based in Dublin here in Ireland. And yeah, so today is going to be a presentation on overcoming period pain. And normally my work is kind of long-term. So I would work one-to-one with people and I do online courses that last about 8 weeks or so. But I really want to give you as much information as you can today and get your value for money, your value for time on your Sunday. So I'm going to be giving you a lot of information today. So with that said, just bear in mind that it might feel a little bit overwhelming. So don't put any pressure on yourself to have to like do it all or to have to like change things overnight. You know, just be mindful of your expectations of yourself. A lot of women suffer with this for many years and haven't been supported or haven't been given the right information. So just be kind to yourself. And I really want to acknowledge that this is very much a journey, a process. And the things that I'm going to talk about aren't all going to work for everyone, and everyone's experience of their cycle is going to manifest in a very different way. So I just want to say that. So before we get started with the content of the you know, the science and the things that we can do to support period pain and PMS, I have a little poll for all the participants in this webinar, and Sandy is going to bring that up right now for you. So I'd love to know what's in the room, who's here, what do you struggle with? So the question is, what type of pain or PMS do you experience? And the first one would be occasionally, it's annoying, and painkillers help, and you mightn't get it all the time. It's not something that you really worry about a huge amount. Or maybe you have period pain and PMS that is there the majority of the time. It's debilitating, it interrupts your life, and painkillers don't really help. So go ahead and pop in your answer there and just take a moment to do that while everyone does that. And then we'll see what results come through. So I don't see the results yet, so I'll just wait for that to come through. And oh, there we go. Thanks very much, Sandy. Okay, so we have 29% is occasional, and then 71% is the debilitating interrupts in my life. So you're in the right place. You're so welcome here. You're not alone. We you know, I really get that. I come from a place myself of really having what I describe now as having a very intimate relationship with debilitating pain. It's very familiar to me. And yeah, there's lots of things you can do to help. And do pop in any questions you have along the way. We're going to try and leave some time at the end for questions and answers. Feel free to share anything that resonates. Feel free to share any kind of experience or things you've, you know, things that you might want to try after we go through the talk. And I'd be really curious to see how we get on. So let's move into the topic of, hang on a second, menstrual cycle awareness. So the way that I work with women is that I work with them what's called systemically. So I look at the menstrual cycle as a whole rather than just looking at where the problem area is, because if we have a problem with a particular area of our menstrual cycle. So you might have period pain in the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle, or you might have PMS in the premenstrual phase. It's important to look at what's going on as a whole picture. And so the way that I work is I work with what's called the inner seasons of the menstrual cycle. And so some of you might have been to the talk that I gave for the International Women's Day Festival last year at the MAC, where we talked about the inner seasons. So I'm going to do a very quick overview of this again. And for anyone who's new to this is an absolute game changer. It was a game changer for me in my life in terms of understanding my body, understanding my hormones, and giving me a really, really practical framework that I can work with every day of my cycle in understanding how I can implement self-care around my menstrual cycle and how I can prepare for pain and try and prevent pain as much as I can. So I'm going to explain what you see here on the screen. So these are the archetypes, which is like another word for a metaphor. So the menstruation at the bottom is the archetype of the inner winter, if we think about the seasons of the year. And this is where hormones are at their absolute lowest for people who have menstrual cycles. And because hormones have dropped to a particular level, that allows then for the lining of the womb to shed, and then we get our period. And so the reason that the metaphor, the archetype for this is the inner winter is because it is a low energy time. It is psychologically an inward focused time. It's a very tender, vulnerable time. And a lot is happening here on a biological level. There's a lot of, even though the hormones are low, there's still a lot happening hormonally to get the shedding of the lining of the womb every month. And so it's the inner winter. It's time to really take care of yourself. It's time to down tools. It's time to rest. And for most people who are here, people are really struggling with this time. So the more permission you give to yourself to down tools, it's very likely the easier your experience will be. So, you know, we have to think about that as well in the context of our lives. A lot of people will have full-time jobs, have children and that kind of thing, and they can't completely switch off. But this isn't about completely switching off and running away from our lives as much as we sometimes want to do that. This is really about taking 1% tiny micro changes that you can do in your cycle every month and build on them over time. So really practically, this could be, in my world, it's wearing looser clothing during my period when I'm sore or if I'm bloated, and really making a point to do that and making sure I have them easily available where I can find them in my wardrobe. It's about having lots of fresh food, healthy food in my fridge, in my freezer, so that I don't have to cook, or, you know, knowing takeaways that do really healthy food that's, you know, low in sugar and salt, and that I can ring so I don't have to cook if you're in pain. Letting my partner know, letting, you know, my support network know, and maybe if you need to talk to your boss or people in the workplace or whoever you feel comfortable with, so that you're not alone, you're not isolating with this, because pain, especially chronic pain, can be a very lonely, isolating experience. So the more support you have around you, the better your experience will be, and the better your recovery and healing journey with cycle awareness and this process of the inner seasons will be for you. So I just really want to reiterate the importance of that winter time. It is tender, it's delicate, it's vulnerable. And so it's about creating a holding space in yourself so that you can hold that tenderness and be with yourself. And I'm going to talk through more ways that we can prevent and reduce pain in the next few slides. This slide is really about looking at the ebb and flow of the whole cycle and the energies, so we can understand our body more from that holistic perspective, and understand our energy management around it. So that's winter, really important season. And then we move on to the inner spring. So the inner spring of the menstrual cycle is the pre-ovulation phase of the menstrual cycle. So if winter is day one, so the day one of your period to about day 4 or 5, then spring will be around day 5 to about day 10. But it's very important for me to say that you decide, because it's your body, you decide where your seasons start for you. So for me, my winter actually starts from a psychological perspective 1 or 2 days before menstruation. So that will help me get into the mindset of, oh, I'm in winter now, I need to start really downing tools and resting, because it kind of prevents that burnout for me then during winter. And then my spring comes in at about day 5 or so. So this is where estrogen starts to rise. So estrogen is the role of estrogen is to give energy and to, well, it has lots of roles, but one or two of them is to give energy and build the lining of the womb again. And it also allows for that cervical mucus to come through and build libido. So it's good for fertility. And we usually, generally speaking, if you have pain, you'll start to feel good here, or you can feel tired here. So if you do feel tired because you've experienced a lot of pain, it's important to very gently ease out of menstruation and just manage your energy here, manage your expectations of yourself, manage that inner critic around here. Because I think if we do suffer a lot with pain, we can then put a lot of pressure on ourselves to try and like get everything done, you know, when as soon as the pain is gone. But actually pain and PMS can be a very exhausting experience. So it's important when you're in spring, if you think about the season of spring even, it is a very, it's still quite a delicate, tender time. You know, we've got really delicate flowers, spring lambs, you know, it's the season that's in between winter and summer, you know, so it's sunny, but it's still cold. And sometimes it's, you know, we feel like we're going back to winter, and then sometimes we feel like we're going towards summer. So it's kind of that negotiation between energies. And it's the same thing with the menstrual cycle on a very subtle level. I would see a lot of people who could suffer with burnout and anxiety during their inner spring of their menstrual cycle. So if you do get that, take heart, you're not alone. That's a very common experience. And it's really easy to reboot yourself. It's just about a little bit more self-care, you know, going a little slower, even just not necessarily having to do less in your day, but just slowing down a little bit and just, you know, bringing a little bit more gentle approach to yourself and a little bit more inner kindness can really do wonders in that inner spring phase. So then we come to the inner summer of the menstrual cycle, ovulation, which is the height of estrogen. It's the polar opposite of menstruation. And so generally speaking, this is the good week. This is the superwoman time of the menstrual cycle. From a psychological perspective, we have more capacity for other people's needs here. We're able to, you know, say yes to things and, you know, be creative, and our productivity can increase here, our motivation can increase here. We have more resilience in terms of our mental health. So if there's difficulties going on in your life, personally speaking, for me, I have a lot more inner buffer for that. I can kind of take, you know, difficult days better during this time. So it's a good time. So what I would suggest is for people who really suffer with PMS and pain to really lean into that summer, to really, you know, enjoy that summertime, get your medicine from being with your friends, you know, as much as you can during the current pandemic, you know, reach out to people and let yourself have a new outfit, you know, try new makeup, a new, you know, whatever it is, and feel good about yourself. It can be a very, very creative time, high energy time. If you do suffer with burnout during this time, that's usually a sign that we're kind of rushing through the inner spring of the menstrual cycle. So again, take heart, you know, you can totally, lots of self-care, go for walks, exercise, that kind of thing is good in the inner summertime. And then when we cross over from inner summer to the autumn, which is the premenstrual phase, usually, how do we know when we're crossing over? So that's, for me, that looks like I go from having like, you know, 10 days. So maybe it could be like day 10 to day 20 would be my inner summer. And then I might have one random day where I'll wake up in the morning and I just feel a little, you know, moody or a little grumpy, or someone will get in my way in the supermarket and I, you know, it kind of irritates me. I just feel like my edges are a little, you know, more exposed, and that starts to build, you know. So that's usually a sign, okay, I'm kind of crossing over now into my inner autumn, which is where we get the hormone progesterone. So estrogen is dropping, and then progesterone starts to increase. So progesterone is the second hormone of the menstrual cycle. The role of progesterone is to thin the lining of the womb and then also to soothe the nervous system. So there can be a few days between summer and inner autumn where progesterone hasn't yet reached its highest, where we can get a little rattled and get a little irritated, or we can feel very blue or very low. So, and especially at the moment where with the pandemic, we don't have our social outlets as much. So that can actually make the inner summer quite difficult. And so if we're kind of isolating a bit more and we're by ourselves, And then we come into the inner autumn and we don't have our people around us, you know, we can feel that in terms of our mental health. So just to note that for yourself, to note that there is a very hormonal experience happening there. So because progesterone, one of the roles of progesterone is to soothe the nervous system, one of the reasons why we can get PMS or even period pain is because there's a little bit of an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. There's not enough progesterone in the system. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, this can be a very tender time for a lot of people, especially if you have severe PMS, whether that's manifesting physically or psychologically or emotionally, or there's even a condition called PMDD, which I'll talk about a bit later as well, which is, you know, PMS, but on a very serious level where mental health is very affected. So the inner autumn is, you know, if you struggle with PMS during this time, this is a really important time to self-care, because as we come from summer to autumn, remember when I said that we have more capacity for other people's needs, so it kind of switches a bit. So the focus starts to come inwards a bit more, and we start to realize, oh wait, my needs are important too, right? And the kind of the needs that we've parked will start to come into the fore a bit. And so it's important to start to think about that, to start to look at that and self-care as much as you can. So if you're going to practice self-care, if you have PMS and period pain and you want to make changes to your diet or your lifestyle, or you're doing yoga or whatever it is that you want to try, things to try to support your nervous system and your endocrine system, and you don't have a huge amount of time because you're busy, the premenstrual week is a really good week to do that. That's a good time to really practice self-care. And then you'll see there on the slide, I have a little segment called the void, which I'll just briefly touch on. This is, it could be a couple of days or a few hours before, a few days or a few hours before menstruation, where you just feel like you're in no man's land psychologically or physically. And it can be very, very tender. Some women experience darkness during this time in terms of their mental health, or loneliness or depression. And that's all very real. And there's lots of things you can do to support yourself with that. And again, you're not alone with that. Or some women will just experience like brain fog, or in my case, well, it depends on what's going on in my life actually, but if things are going okay, generally my symptoms here would be that my communication skills just go down, and I start putting typos and everything, and I forget what I'm going to say, and I just can't really speak properly. However, on the flip side of that, my intuition and my ability to really connect inwardly is very strong. So that's the kind of the good side of this. That this whole cycle, it's an ebb and flow. So spring and summer are very outward focused times where our kind of psychological focus is easier to be outward. And then autumn and winter is more inward. And when our psyche and our physiology is pulling us inward for the kind of the darker side, that yin feminine, the autumn winter side of the menstrual cycle, and the reality of our life is pulling us outward, we can get a bit of a conflict. So this work is really about navigating the relationship between our outer world and our inner world in the context of our menstrual cycle, which I think is pretty cool. It's really cutting edge, I think. So I hope that makes sense. Do keep popping your questions in the chat box, and we'll have a look at them later on. And I'm going to move on now to the next slide in a moment. Okay, so let's talk about what causes PMS and pain, because this is really important. And when I learned what exactly causes PMS and pain, it was a game changer, because then I was like, well, if I know what causes it, then I know kind of what things I can do to prevent it. And I'm real practical like that. I like to know, you know, what's the reason, what's the science, and I went and figured it out. So just going to acknowledge that pain and PMS are very physical, emotional, and psychological experiences. They're all three of those things. So it's important to acknowledge for yourself and validate all of those things, okay? And it can be different for some people, and it'll be different depending on what month as well. So sometimes you'll get much more pain or more bloating, but your mental health will be okay. Or other times you'll have a racing mind or lots of sadness or grief and things like that. And again, from that emotional perspective, like looking at the cycle, it can be really helpful to kind of move with the emotions as you journey your cycle every month. So if you do have grief, or you're going through something difficult in work or with a relationship, or to kind of work with the cycle and almost allow yourself to feel those difficult feelings in like the seasons like autumn and winter, because it is kind of like an emotional cleanse. The more we allow ourselves to feel our feelings, even though that can be really hard and uncomfortable, it's important to be safe in ourselves to do that. But the better our experience will be for the menstrual cycle. I'm just going to check the chat. Jen, should I check that the chat Q&A? Did you leave me a message there, or is that okay?
I think you can just, I'm just responding to some of the questions that are coming in and just letting folks know.
Oh, great.
I've seen them okay, but we can leave them until the end of the session.
Thanks, Jen.
No probs.
Okay, so what causes PMS and pain? So yeah, just acknowledging that it's a physical, emotional, and psychological experience. And then the first word here is inflammation. It's an inflammatory experience in the body for various reasons, okay? And it's important then to think about, okay, well, if I have inflammation in my body, whether that's coming from stress or diet or lifestyle or lack of sleep or, lack of exercise or whatever, what steps can I take to kind of just every month, just very gently, like step by step, just bring that inflammation down, because that's a really great way of preventing PMS and pain from coming in the first place. So to start to think like that, start to think like, oh, what could cause inflammation for me? Or do I feel like I have inflammation, and how can I bring that down? And there'll be other ways that inflammation will present, like if you're getting a lot of headaches or joint pain or things like that, or you're struggling with sleep, or you're just feeling like, that feeling of you just feel like you have inflammation all over your body, or you just feel not regulated in your system. That's usually a sign there's inflammation. And the good news is that there's loads of things you can do to bring that down. So then I have written prostaglandin levels. So what are prostaglandins? That's kind of a science word that I'm going to explain. So prostaglandins are hormones that people with menstrual cycles have that will allow the uterus to contract. Okay, so they're actually they're kind of neutral. They're not good or bad, and they play a role in menstruation, and they play a role in birth. So they're the hormones that send the message to the uterus to kind of like contract the muscles so that the lining of the womb can be shed, or there can be a birth, right? So it's kind of a trigger hormone. But the problem is that if there's too many prostaglandins in the system, in our biology, that causes cramping that's just like way too sore, and it's not necessary, almost like birth type experience for just when you're on your period, which is not necessary. Okay, so other signs that you might have high prostaglandin levels would be if you get lightheaded with your period, fainting, vomiting, and a really good sign that you have high prostaglandin levels is if you get diarrhea with your period, like for a few days, like if you get the runs, particularly if you're constipated a couple of days before your period, and then you get the runs with your period, and it's not just like a little bit of diarrhea, it's like you feel drained after, and it's not, it doesn't feel good. So that would be a good sign that you have high prostaglandin levels. And again, this is good news, because then you can, think about ways that you can bring it down. So, and then I have written estrogen dominance, and estrogen dominance actually can cause high prostaglandin levels. Okay, so estrogen dominance means that we have a little bit too much estrogen in relation to progesterone. So that means that we have too much estrogen in relation to progesterone, or that our progesterone levels are too low in relation to estrogen. So there's always kind of like a dominance of estrogen. And some people, from the work I've done, I really believe that some people are just a little bit more sensitive to that than other people, myself included. Okay, so it mightn't show up in your doctor's results. It probably would show up in the kinds of tests that a nutritionist would take, but your doctor might not be able to sort of see it because their thresholds wouldn't be the same. But you can tell yourself if you're getting bloating, if you're getting really chronic period pain, if you're getting lots of acne around your chin and your jaw, if you're getting really bad brain fog and like headaches and things with and before your period, it's usually a sign that you have estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance will come from lots of things. So blood sugar levels. So if you're either not eating enough, skipping meals, or if you are eating lots, but it's kind of lots of processed sugary foods, and your sugar levels are going up and down and up and down, and you're kind of trying to manage your life, and you're kind of, eating meals just to get energy, and you're not taking your time, then that can cause a little bit of your blood sugar levels are going up and down a lot. And you'll know that because you'll very often experience the kind of hangry feeling, okay? Or you feel exhausted after your lunch or something. And that's usually a sign that your blood sugar levels are going up and down and you're kind of craving sugar, or you're craving coffee, or you're craving carbs. And so what happens is when our blood sugar levels going up and down like this all the time, that then has a knock-on effect because it's hormones. Our whole endocrine system is interconnected. It has a knock-on effect on our stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, and they'll be going up and down. And then we have a knock-on effect on our estrogen levels, so our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And then because the whole thing is interlinked, that then can cause period problems. And again, like I said, some people are just a little bit more sensitive to that. So some people will have no problem with their periods and they eat whatever they want, and then some people don't, you know, so that's my case, and it's annoying, and it's kind of, you have to accept that. So to think about that, how can we, you know, would that be something that you'd think about in terms of your lifestyle? And then I've written down stress and emotions as well. So stress, whether that's from the pandemic or stress in our own lives, or stress could be, you know, could be anything. Starting a new business, which is a good thing, but it brings a lot of stress, or, you know, a new relationship, which is really exciting, but that also, like in a very neutral sense, brings stress, because there's a lot of cortisol running through the system when we're falling in love and things like that, you know, that can cause stress in the system. Or emotions, if we don't have outlets that we feel safe to share our emotions, if we're going through difficult times and we happen to be quite highly sensitive people, then our emotions can get bottled up inside. Or if we're really good at being there for people and we're good at like looking after others, but we're not the type of people who ask for help and ask support, kind of over time things can build up and we can feel overwhelmed. And stress, because of the physiological nature of stress, it'll have an impact then on our endocrine system, like in the previous point, and can lead to hormonal problems. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is all about preventing and reducing symptoms. So this is all the really good stuff that you can do to kind of bring down inflammation, balance estrogen and progesterone a little bit more, bring down stress, you know, prevent the high prostaglandins, prevent pain, prevent PMS, and hopefully have a little bit more of an easier relationship with your cycle. So the very first point here I have is diet. This is really, really important. And this slide is all about the physical, and the next one will be about emotional and psychological. But the physical of, you know, the physical body, because I work in a very holistic way, this is really important. So when you're looking at diet, think anti-inflammatory, think foods like lots of vegetables, lots of, you know, good quality water, reducing caffeine as much as you can, reducing sugar, reducing alcohol, reducing salt, and reducing processed foods. That will really, really, really help you prevent period pain and PMS. And if that's, and I know that is a really big ask to do in terms of changing diet, and maybe you already have, but even if you were to try this a few days before menstruation or in the week before your period, having an anti-inflammatory diet is an amazing thing that you can do. And one of the reasons is it brings down the levels of inflammation, and it also helps prevent constipation. So then fiber as well, that leads me on to the next point. Fiber, having high fiber in your diet, helps to prevent constipation, and that will then prevent then the diarrhea and bring down prostaglandins in the bowels. So what happens is, if our gut and our liver are not properly kind of processing our hormones, estrogen dominance can happen, because if we're constipated, our gut will reabsorb the estrogen that it's trying to get rid of every month. And then we have this reabsorption of that estrogen, and that can lead to estrogen dominance. So fiber, lots of fiber, so lots of fruit and veg. You can Google like which fruits and vegetables have high fiber. Things like, I know pear is one of the fruits high in fiber. Pulses, like things like lentils and chickpeas and you know, beans, things like that. Whole grains, all plant-based foods. All plant-based foods will have fiber, and some people will react differently to certain things, like because some fibers will be too harsh. So things like popcorn has a lot of fiber, but that might leave you feeling a little bit unsettled in your tummy. So just kind of try a few different things and see what works for you. But fiber is like really, like it's a superpower food in terms of hormones and period pain. And if you are increasing your fiber in your diet, make sure you're drinking plenty of water, extra water, warm water, herbal teas, things like that can really help. And then magnesium. So magnesium is a really good mineral for soothing the nervous system and preventing and supporting you if you have PMS, especially if it's mental health and you've got anxiety and things like that. So you can take a supplement which you can get from the health food store, and you can also find it in green leafy vegetables like kale, chard, cabbage, pak choi, things like that. Like anything green and leafy is good for magnesium. And you can also get it from Epsom salts and take Epsom salt baths as well. So that's a nice thing to do before your period, just to kind of increase your magnesium. Then iron is a good one, obviously, because lots of women can be left feeling, low in energy or even anemic. So that's important. Get that in, spinach, legumes, beetroot, and then, if you're not having only plant-based, you can get in obviously red meat, things like liver and turkey, things like that. Zinc, B vitamins, vitamin D, calcium. So those are kind of a few supplements you could try as well. And ginger, you can either drink this fresh, grated into tea, or take capsules, and it really helps act as like a kind of a natural painkiller. So if you take ginger during and before your periods, that can really help. And turmeric, I didn't write that down. Turmeric is a good one as well to bring down inflammation. And then thinking about allergens, so food-wise, I have seen a lot of people really benefit from removing dairy from their diet. So you could try that for a couple of months, dairy and or gluten, especially if you get a lot of bloating. You could give that a go, see how you get on. And then toxins. So toxins would be like parabens that you see in your makeup, in your household cleaning products. Some people are really sensitive to them and they can cause some hormone disruption. So, having a look out for beauty products and household cleaning products that are a little bit more eco-friendly, paraben-free labels, things like that in your health food store. I think I have a video, an IGTV on all my favorite makeup brands that are paraben-free. You can have a look at that, and that'll help just to kind of, clear your system a little bit. Painkillers as well. Obviously, painkillers are great for pain, but there's a really good tip that I have to share for pain, which is that if you're taking codeine, which here in the Republic of Ireland, you'd find that in the likes of Nurofen Plus or Salpidine. Again, speak to your pharmacist and or your doctor about what painkillers you're taking. But if you are generally happy to take painkillers, codeine can actually cause constipation, which can then contribute to period pain. So if you can take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, so an NSAID, which is just ibuprofen or aspirin, take it. If you get really bad pain, take it the day before your period, or take it with the onset of menstruation, because what you're doing then is you're stopping the prostaglandin levels getting really high. So you want to nip the pain in the bud, because a lot of people will wait until the pain gets completely out of hand and then they'll take painkillers and they don't really work. But what you want to do is take the painkiller at the tiniest twinge of pain, and then that will prevent the pain from getting out of hand and will prevent you from needing loads of painkillers for the whole week. So give that a try, see how you get on. That's what I do. Energy management. So again, going back to that whole cycle, trying to practice self-care around the menstrual cycle and understand the nature of your hormones, where you are, I'm in spring or I'm in autumn or winter, sharing that with your friends and keeping it in your diary, writing it in your journal. That can be a really nice thing to do. Sleep. So I learned recently that the hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is the time where our sleep is for regulating our hormones. So the more sleep you get between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., it's really, really good for your hormones. And at the moment, I know that a lot of people are struggling with sleep with the pandemic. Maybe at this point, you've already gotten back into a bit of a rhythm. And with the good weather coming back, sleep is a bit easier. But something I found really helpful is getting out for my morning walk early. So getting daylight into your eyes, getting the melatonin cycle kind of working in your body. If you go for your walk in the morning and get daylight into your skin and your eyes before midday, that can really help to regulate hormones, regulate melatonin, regulate your sleep cycle. And then that will make you feel sleepy then by 10, 11 o'clock. And it'll be easier for you to actually get those hours of sleep between 10 and 2 a.m. And hopefully that will be good for your body, because sleep is really important for breath, just healing the body. And then movement, getting your movement, getting a little bit of exercise, even if it is just gentle movement. If you're menstruating and you're in pain, don't be going to the gym, don't be going for marathons, just gentle yoga, light, gentle walks, go really easy on yourself, do a little home yoga video. And then if you're in inner summer and you have loads of energy, go for it, get your exercise. And then relationships, I see relationships as a really important part of our physical health. And the more comfortable we feel in our relationships, the safer we feel. It's a really important part of our mental health, and that will then have an impact on our physical health. So just take a moment now to check in. Hope you're doing okay. As I said before, it's a lot of information, and I really want you to get as much as you can from this. And yeah, like I don't want you to feel like you have to try it all. This is all a huge amount of information that I've learned over the years from reading many books and from working with a lot of women. So you might just take one or two things from today to try, and then where I am if you ever need to talk. And I have lots of resources on my website that you can look at. So let's look at then our psychological and emotional well-being, which is a really big part of PMS especially, and I also believe period pain. So this is all about really increasing our safety, increasing our emotional, psychological safety in ourselves, and feeling supported, feeling not alone anymore with our difficulty, and being able to talk about this with our friends, and being comfortable to talk about it with your healthcare provider, because I do believe that the kind of the shame and stigma that we've experienced for many years, and the lonely nature of these difficulties can leave us feeling in a very uncomfortable position and not really equipped enough to speak to our doctor and assert ourselves, or with whoever is supporting us. So it's important to be able to find our voice in this, to find, what our needs are, to get clear on what our needs are, what we need support with, what's not okay to put up with. It's not okay to put up with chronic period pain every month where you're completely debilitated. That isn't normal. So, there's lots of support out there. So it's important to get it, but again, gently, easy does it over time. So cycle tracking is the first thing I wrote down. So this is where you just very easy log in your diary where you are. Day 1 of your period is the first day of menstruating. And then you can use the app. There's lots of apps you can use. You can use Clue, CLUE, which is a great app. That's what I use. And I put in day 1 of my period, and then it remembers then for the rest of the cycle where I am. So if I ever forget, if I ever want to know, what day am I on my cycle, I'll know what day I'm on if I quickly click on the app, and it's free to use, and you can put in your symptoms and track your cycle. I like using a diary as well. I like to kind of keep track in my diary of where I am, and it helps with things like planning my work, and if I'm looking at lots of social events or holiday or saying yes to things, it can be helpful to kind of know where you are. Because if we think back to that inner summer as well, if you're in the inner summer and you feel great, it can be very easy to forget that you actually do struggle with PMS and period pain, and it's tempting then to say yes to everything. So it's important to not let the inner summer of our menstrual cycle kind of govern our diary, because then we regret that then a few weeks later. Okay, so so just keeping an eye on that, like knowing that you are cyclical, you are not your pain, you are not your PMS, you are also not only the inner summer, you are kind of, there's all of these experiences we have, and being able to stand in the middle a little bit. So cycle tracking can really help with that. I actually have a journal that helps with it, that you can see on my website. PMS. So PMS, a client of mine shared this amazing acronym, which, okay, we all know it stands for premenstrual syndrome, but her acronym is Please Make Space, which I thought was genius, because PMS is like, it's where it does feel a bit like your body is starting to ask you for more space and more needs to be met. And, we can get moody and cranky, and it can impact our relationships and things like that. So to sit with ourselves, there's truth underneath our feelings, there's truth underneath those emotions. We are not crazy people for having, a menstrual cycle, and it just doesn't always come out in the most glamorous way. And that's we got to learn how to navigate that piece. But there are needs and there's truths underneath that. So it's important to validate that, to get really curious and kind with yourself about what's underneath your PMS. Do you need more space? Do you need more support? Do you need more time? I find that the more I do rest during menstruation and the more space I give myself, even though in my head I think, I'm not going to get all my work done, it's not true. I actually get lots of work done then the other days of the cycle, because I'm not catching up on my energy. so you can compensate, you know, as much as you can in the reality of your life. So that's important. Allow and befriend feelings. That's really important. You know, sit down on your yoga mat, have a cry, let yourself feel your feelings, take a bath, grab some chocolate if you need it. You know, dark chocolate's probably better for bloating. And just nourish yourself, be really kind, cherish yourself. It can do wonders, really can do wonders. And then flow with your cycle, like start to understand your cycle from that flow, you know, cyclical point of view. And it'll be a much easier way to kind of go with the experience, because as a person with a cycle, you're flowing with something. You're cyclical, like the seasons of the year. There's an ebb and a flow. There's an inhale. There's an exhale. There's the yin and the yang, the masculine, the feminine, and that manifests as our physical reality and also our emotional and our psychological reality. So it is actually really cool. We have this, like, I see it as like an inbuilt system, like an inbuilt compass that can guide us every month in terms of our self-care, can give us reasons as to why we feel a certain way, and it can even support our creativity and our work and things like that, our relationships. This can be a really helpful tool to bring into your romantic relationships too, because your partner will then understand and then know how to help you look after yourself, which I feel they always they like to know how to help. So another good thing as well from a psychological perspective, if pain began randomly, if you didn't always have pain, and if it began randomly in your life and you don't know why it's there and you haven't been able to find a reason, you know, or find a way to fix it, let's just say, to very gently reflect on, when did the pain begin, and what was your life context, what was happening in your life at that time? Because sometimes, not always, sometimes there can be stuck stress or trauma in the system that can then link into the menstrual cycle. I can't explain why that is. I just think it's the wisdom of, you know, women's bodies, and that sometimes these things can kind of interconnect. So to, you know, just reflect on that, and then that'll give you a little clue or signpost in terms of what could be a contributing factor to this stress, and how can you get support with that, whether it's working with someone one-to-one or in a group, or, you know, a therapist or something like that. And it's really important to consider that, because I've seen people who've gone through abuse, of domestic abuse, things like that, that their periods got bad during and after those situations, and they never saw the connection. So it's important. Or it can even be like, you can even have something in your past, like a very difficult breakup or a difficult situation in a workplace that left you a little bit rattled, and you know, it could manifest in period problems and PMS and things like that. So that's important to acknowledge. Also, menarche. So menarche is the word there that I've written down for our first period, and it's, you know, to think about that in the same way. When did I first get my period, and what were the lessons that I got or didn't get, and you know, how did I feel about menstruation? How did I feel about my body as a woman? What was my relationship like? What did I learn from my care providers? Things like that. What was it like for me as an adolescent and as a prepubescent girl? Was it a difficult time for me? And, you know, there might be some, you know, emotional, spiritual healing that needs to happen there. Journaling, working with a therapist, working with a coach, that things like that can really help. Sometimes even just journaling those things out can really help, because again, as I said, things can get stuck in the past. Okay, so I feel like I've talked a lot with a lot of information, like I said I was going to. So we're going to take a wee moment to just do a very gentle, soothing exercise. Hang on a second, I'm just going to check my next slide. Oh yeah, okay. So just take a moment to just sit down in your chair, your couch, or your bed, wherever you are. And I'm going to guide you through a very, very gentle, soothing exercise that will help with pain or PMS. And if you feel in any way overwhelmed today, or triggered, or emotionally vulnerable, you don't have to do this. You can just let this wash over you. And you can do it another time when you feel more safe to do so. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through a very gentle somatic practice where you're going to touch your forehead and the back of your neck and just repeat phrases quietly to yourself, okay? So take a moment to just drop inside in your chair. Take a few breaths. And just bring one of your hands to your forehead and just holding your forehead in a very gentle, compassionate, soothing kind of way. And just notice how that feels. You don't have to do anything, you just have to notice. Just notice how it feels to put your hand on your forehead. And then take the other hand and place it just on the lower base of the skull. Yeah, and just hold your head. So you're holding these very important nerve endings. And very quietly, you can say to yourself, it is safe to have a menstrual cycle. It is safe to menstruate. It is safe to let go. And just notice. It is safe to have a menstrual cycle. It is safe to menstruate. It is safe to let go. And just notice your body and your nervous system. And if your arms are tired, you can bring them down to your heart or your womb space, wherever you feel you'd like to kind of touch your body. You can touch your arms or your shoulders, or you can even hug yourself like this. Or some people like to put their hands on their womb and do the same thing. It is safe to have a menstrual cycle. It is safe to menstruate. It is safe to let go. And just notice that. So you can do that again in your own time. It's a really nice thing to do. If you're sitting on the toilet in pain, if you're in bed in pain, just speak to your body. Your body is highly intelligent, and it's going to take that in. And over time, it'll start to kind of work its alchemy in your nervous system. So I'll very gently move on now. Just briefly want to touch on some underlying conditions that do need to be looked at by medical health professionals. So endometriosis is where, if you have done all of the things that I've said and you still have pain, or if you've got really bad pain with sex or with bowel movements, that could be an underlying condition. Fibroids, where you might have very heavy bleeding. Adenomyosis, very difficult to pronounce, again, very painful periods, could be an underlying condition. Pelvic inflammatory disease, PMDD, that's the extreme form of PMS, which I do actually work with on a one-to-one level. But these things are all really important to go to your GP, to go to the endometriosis charities that are around. There's good clinics in the UK. There's really good clinics. There's a good endometriosis clinic, I believe, in Birmingham and in London, with specialist people who can really help. So yeah, do get checked out. And then this is a little reflection exercise that you can take a moment to do now, or you can take a screenshot. But I think I've kind of said it all already, really, for you to think about. You can journal on this. So in what way do you struggle with your cycle, and how has your experience been? How has it impacted your life? What messages have you received directly or indirectly about the menstrual cycle? How can you support yourself through this? What do you need? What would you like? And it's important to think about the last one, like what your needs are, what you like, how can you create hope for yourself, and a little action plan. So just noting the time, I won't spend too much on this one, but do take a screenshot of that, and you can take that with you to think about with your cup of tea for the rest of your Sunday. And if you need any further support, I offer free consultations for coaching. I also have online courses that are in groups. You can also download a cycle tracker from my website, yourcyclematters.com, and then my Instagram is there. So that's it. We're going to move on to questions, and I'll just leave that up for anyone. So I'm just going to find the Q&A here now. Hang on. Oh no, I think I need to stop share. And okay. Oh, I have questions here, and you can still see the screen, I think, right? Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead with questions, will I, Jen, and read them out, the one in the answered section?
Yeah, absolutely. Go through the questions there. We've had some questions through the chat function as well, so I'll send them over to you directly as well, Lisa.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, anonymous attendee. Hi Lisa, I recently turned 38, have no children and have suffered with PMD for a number of years, which brings suicidal ideation. In the last year, I've also developed shooting and burning pain in my lower left side each month, which follows ovulation and lasts until my period arrives. Scans have revealed nothing that could be causing the pains. Because of these two factors, I've recently been put back on the pill to trick my pituitary gland, and my doctor, the hospital, are discussing chemical-induced menopause, as apparently the PMDD will only get worse. And I'm already medicated for depression and PTSD. Okay, I'm just going to take that in. I am not sure that I am ready for this, and I feel like I'm on a trajectory and have no control over it. Do you have experience of people who have been through this, where the medical advice makes it inevitable, or would you advise me to try put the brakes on? I don't know if I can have children. I have never been pregnant and I'm not sure if I should begin to grieve. Okay. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, your personal story. I just really want to acknowledge that and acknowledge what you've been through. And it's really brave for you to come on here and share that and seek support. That's the main thing. I would love to talk to you one-to-one, so please do pop in a little half-hour chat where we can have a cup of tea and talk about a few options. But just from what I'm reading, it sounds like there could be a lot of overwhelm in the system, and we need to feel really safe and sure that we're in good hands when we're working with medical professionals. Lots of people don't have good experience. I'm going to be really honest, lots of people don't have good experience when it comes to getting the correct help and diagnoses for things like this, and particularly scans. So endometriosis, unless you're getting scanned by an endometriosis specialist in a clinic like the one I just mentioned in Birmingham and in London, you need to get a laparoscopy surgery to identify what's going on. That could be one of the reasons that you are having that shooting pain. There could very much be a physiological reason for that. And endometriosis can cause all sorts of hormonal inflammation in the body and then lead to mental health difficulty. And trust me, I've been there. I know that place really well. So I would say don't feel under any pressure. It's really, when you're embarking on a journey of recovery and healing, it's important that you do it from a place of feeling safe in yourself and you're taking it at the pace that's right for you. So that's all I'll say for that. And it could well be endometriosis or something. But do pop a chat in my diary and we can have a talk, because there would be things that I could support you with for sure. Okay. My periods are generally okay, but ovulation can put me off my feet. Oh, okay, yeah, I know that one as well. I went to a gynae and all was well. Any reason for this ovulation pain or ideas for what might help? Yeah, there could be a little bit of estrogen dominance there, so an inflammation. So it's very common to get pain around ovulation. Excuse me. It's called Mittelschmerz, which is like a German word for middle pain, mid-month pain. So it could be estrogen dominance. Like I said, bringing down the inflammation as much as you can. You can also try things like Maya massage therapy, MAYA massage therapy. That's a very alternative holistic practice that you can find. You can find practitioners who are actually they're practicing now, because it is kind of an essential service for chronic pain in Ireland at least, and they can teach you how to do it yourself over Zoom. So if you don't find it on Google, send me an email and I can send you the names of a few people. And you can do things like herbal steaming as well is good, because it kind of helps relax the uterus a bit. It's an alternative practice that a lot of women use and it's shown wonderful results. And then taking magnesium would be really good for that as well, I'd say. Hi Lisa, I'm 25. I suffer severely with pain during my period, being floored and bedbound. I also have suffered from ovarian cysts in the past, which were 6 to 8 centimeters. GPs have continued to try to put me on the pill, but I don't feel this will get to the bottom of the problem. I've asked to be referred to gynae again, concerned it is endometriosis. Would you advise going on the pill or continuing to seek out the root of the problem? Yeah, this is a journey in my personal life, I'm constantly on a little bit as well when symptoms come back. So the pill is great because it does kind of shut down ovulation and then shuts down, like, to put it bluntly, shuts down the menstrual cycle and then stops those problems from happening. But the problem is that then obviously you can't get pregnant on the pill, and it has lots of other side effects, and there's lists of them. So it can be a good idea to try different types of the pill if you're really suffering. Like, I don't believe in trying to really be a martyr and not be on the pill just because you don't agree with it. Like, if the pill helps you through your symptoms and it's preventing dark times, it can be a really good thing to do while you journey changing your diet. And the mini pill is an option. You can get the Mirena coil as well. That's been shown to be, have good results for women with fewer symptoms. So I would say get different advice from different GPs. There's a Well Woman clinic you can talk to. There's lots of information online. Just try and get as much information as you can. And then if you go on the pill for a while, you can always change it and try a new one. But yeah, if it is endometriosis, you can support that with a low inflammatory lifestyle, tracking your cycle, bringing down symptoms, and bringing down those prostaglandin levels. And if after 6 months it's still there, then you might want to consider, getting that laparoscopy. That's kind of what I would do, but it really is your journey. As much information, this is all about informed consent. Learn as much as you can, try things, and then when you feel comfortable, do them. And when you feel comfortable with your healthcare provider, then that's going to be the main thing. And do reach out to me if you want to have a chat. Any other questions? I think that's kind of it then. Oh, there's a few more. I have menstruation pain, fairly severe, often at least for a day a month. I am unable to work and exhausted, but also ovulation pain too. I've read in other sources, Macy Hill's book, that, sorry, it's just jumped here, that it could be something to be medically concerned about in this case. I'm not sure if I would approach a GP about this. Would a period consultant be the best call? Also, with my copper coil, my period can be up to 9 days long on a 25-day cycle. So some months I feel like I am constantly on my period. I'm starting acupuncture to help with the latter. But I was wondering if you had any other suggestions for reducing blood flow when it gets this extreme. Yeah, so you can reduce blood flow by ibuprofen is a really good way. And I know not everyone wants to take painkillers, but that's another thing that ibuprofen does, is it just reduces blood flow. You can also take herbs. Your acupuncturist might be the best person to advise. Raspberry leaf tea, I think, is a good one, and certain herbs like rhodiola, I think. If you go into your health food store, Freya, just ask them, talk to your doctor, get a few different opinions on that. But if you want to stop flow immediately, ibuprofen is a good way to do that. And rest. I find that when I support my clients in their journey with resting and surrendering at menstruation, it's actually kind of like it lightens the flow a bit. And then the more we take care of ourselves in one of our periods, it then has a knock-on effect on the next cycle. So the way that we look after ourselves during menstruation will inform the rest of the cycle. I'm just conscious we're going over time. Will I continue on, Jem? There's just a couple more questions, or do you need to go?
Yeah, you can continue on. I think it's good to get through some of these questions because I'm sure they're pertinent to lots of people in the group. But if anybody needs to leave because they've got something else to go on to, you can do.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, it's actually just one more question, so I'll get through this one. My 17-year-old daughter has been put on the pill to deal with very bad period pain, vomiting, diarrhea, and complete exhaustion. I previously took her to a homeopath who prescribed a tincture and 1,000 milligram EPO. The EPO was helpful, but tincture was not. She took for 6 months. We don't like the idea of her being on the pill, but it works. She has missed a lot of school. Do you think she should continue with the pill or any alternative? Yeah, it's a really good question. And so one thing is, it is actually quite normal for teenagers to have heavy periods because teenagers have higher levels of estrogen compared to progesterone. So I don't know if for adults on here who remember I don't know, for me, when I was a teenager, I had heavier flow that I thought was something wrong with me, but it's actually very normal. So that will ease out over time. But if she's really struggling with energy, it could be good to get her iron levels checked with her doctor. That's really important because that could be contributing to this as well. So iron levels, get blood tests with the doctor. And then following the advice I gave with anti-inflammatory diet. So, low caffeine, sugar, salt, alcohol. She's 17, hopefully that's not going to be something. And resting at menstruation as much as she can and just take the pressure off can really, really help. So try that for a few months, see how she gets on. And again, like I said, dairy, like taking dairy out of the diet completely for a few months, just see what happens, and that might help. Hi Lisa, have you any advice on how to deal with medical gaslighting and those who tell us that our pain can't be that bad? This is something that upsets me, and I have been deemed high risk for endometriosis and waiting to see a gynecologist. I don't know how to deal with comments like these. I reach out to let others know what I'm going through and to give me my time and space. And I'm sometimes met with this, mainly from men, it exhausts me. Yeah, that's not okay. That is not okay. And you are right to name it as such as medical gaslighting, because that's a very real experience. I read an article in the Irish Times about that last year. And you're doing great. You're doing great to spot it. You're doing great to acknowledge that it's not okay. And if you're not being supported, just move on. Don't waste your time with people who don't help you. Just, you're suffering, you need help. So move on, get support. I'm not sure where you're based, but hopefully there'll be like a well woman clinic or another place where you can get support. But that isn't okay. And don't be afraid to call people out on that, and be really clear on your needs. So if you're speaking to your doctor, be clear on what your needs are, and don't be afraid to tell them that you're annoyed with them. I would anyway. So because the thing about the medical industry or medical world, as great as our doctors can be, there can be power imbalance, and that can cause problems, and it's not good for this kind of stuff. So we don't want to get sucked into those types of dynamics. So you're doing great, and I support you with your journey with that. Shona, what are your thoughts about using Fluxotype, Prozac, to help with PMS and period distress? I don't know, because I'm not a doctor or a pharmacist, but if that's what's being prescribed by a psychiatrist or a GP, then it isn't maybe needed. Like, this would have to be very case-by-case basis. I personally wouldn't use it, because I would see that as, I don't see period pain and mental health difficulties around this menstrual cycle as pathological. I see them as expressions in our system. They're like messages that need to be supported, and maybe for some time Prozac can help support us get through a difficult time, but I wouldn't see that as a long-term sustainable solution for something like that. So I would try to think of it from that point of view, like, and have a conversation with your GP or your healthcare provider about it from that perspective, or integrate some of this work that I've talked about today while you're on your journey with Prozac, and then maybe over time, when you balance hormones a little bit, that can help to lower their need for it. Or you can use other things like other counseling can help, and other herbs and magnesium and things like that can really support mental health. But yeah, I wouldn't be pathologizing these kinds of things in the menstrual cycle. I think that's really important to say. Any more questions, Jen?
I think that's all of them. Yeah, you've covered them all.
Super. Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the MAC, and really enjoyed it. It's my favorite thing to talk about. It's great to see lots of people still on here online, and thank you so much for your questions and your vulnerability and sharing and showing up. I hope that I've helped you. I hope that I've given you something to think about. As I said before, it can be a lot to absorb, a lot to think about. So just take one or two things, try them. You'd be more than welcome to reach out to me for a consultation or do a course with me, and hopefully see you in the future. So I hope you have a lovely Sunday, and take it easy, and see you soon.